Okay, welcome everybody to our monthly Translation at Manchester seminar. My name is Fiona and I'm one of the translation research managers along with Alessandro. And I'd also like to thank Sarah, who's just joined our team, for all her help in organising this seminar. As you know, this seminar occurs monthly and is part of our Translation Manchester Research Network seminar series. This network encompasses 60 partners, both across the university and beyond, and they are all aimed at supporting translational research. You can find out more details about the network and the seminar series via our recently updated booklet, which is downloadable from our website, and I believe Ali is going to put a link in the chat. So each month, 2 members of the network help you in your translational journey. They can provide support and general knowledge. All the events are recorded and can be watched on our YouTube channel, which I believe Ali will also put the link into the chat. And apologies, I've just got the notice that my network is unstable. This is what you get for being in at work, so apologies if I cut out. So I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention our translational research event at Manchester, which will be occurring on the 8th and 9th of December. It will hopefully be a mix of online and face-to-face events, and it is aimed at looking at tackling bottlenecks to deliver impact in health. Registrations are now open, and the link will appear magically in the chat as well. And as part of the event, we'll be holding a poster competition aimed at early career researchers. And Ali will also put this link into the chat. So please feel free to advertise and join in the poster competition. So just before we start with the exciting talks for today, just a little bit of Zoom etiquette, which I'm sure absolutely everybody knows by now. But it'd be great if you could keep yourself on mute and off camera for the moment, so it's not distracting for our speakers. And the session is recorded, so you might not want to be on the recording. We will be taking questions at the end of each talk today, so please put any questions into the chat. And if possible, could you please stay right to the end, as we'll be doing a Zoom poll so that we can get some feedback on how we should run these sessions. So enough of me, and I'm going to hand over to our first speaker today, who is Ania Jolly from the Christabel Pankhurst Institute. And she will be here to tell us about how they're building on the university's strengths in digital technology and advanced materials, and how this is going to be used to develop innovative solutions to health and care challenges. So over to you, Ania.
Thanks for the introduction. I will share my screen now and ask the typical question. Can you see it properly? Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to present on the Pankhurst Institute. So I'm Ania Jolly. I'm the acting operations manager, but I'm also a strategic funding manager. So I support academic to develop grant proposals, a large one and strategic one. So I'm going to start with the introduction. So some of you may know, so Pankhurst, it's a 25 million investment from a partnership. So the partners include Manchester University Foundation Trusts, Manchester Science Partnership, and also the local authorities. And this partnership, this investment is meant to help the city region to develop new health solution to respond to unmet clinical needs. So it has a regional remit, but we hope as well to help nationally by generating new health innovation. So the idea of this interdisciplinary network is a network institute, is to focus and encourage and facilitate translation of health technology. So to capitalize on the research strength that we have in academia at the universities, so in particular digital health and advanced material, but it's not only limited to those two. It's to work closely with our cross-sector partners, so industries, the local industry base, and the trust across Greater Manchester to develop solutions to meet real healthcare needs, so to stay connected to our clinical partners, and to, as I mentioned, accelerate the translation into practice of those solutions. So why Pankhurst? So Pankhurst, actually the idea of Pankhurst is not new. It's very old now, and it started emerging in 2016, where the local industrial strategy was set up and recognized that the University of Manchester and the other universities in Greater Manchester had a lot to offer to generate new health innovation. And so health innovation is a strategic priority of the local industrial strategy. So, so why Pankhurst? From discussing with academics, I have a background in material science to apply in medicine. So I know, we all know more or less that it's not easy to translate or commercialize health innovation. There is a lot of support from the university and local partners, but it's often fragmented, and so they're not joined up, and so that could be very confusing for academics and researchers. So we would like to coordinate and grow excellent support for researchers interested in translating health technology. We want to help to articulate the healthcare needs of the city region and beyond, and to address those with bespoke and health innovation. So there are multiple barriers that we would like to help overcome. And also, we focus a lot on co-development at its key. So co-developing solution with across sector, with the clinical sector and the industrial sector. So, as I mentioned, health technology is a team sport. So not only is multidisciplinary, so when you have a material scientist or an engineer or a data scientist, they don't talk the same language, the same language as the biomedical scientist, and even further away from the clinician. So there are already language barriers, but there are more. So everyone is complementary and can provide and contribute to the success of developing new health innovation. And so it's acknowledged, and we all know that there are a lot of barriers along the way, from the idea and from the deployment. And the pandemic has highlighted a lot of health inequalities and a lot of problems, but it also demonstrated the value of technology and how technology, health technology, can help addressing serious problems and address the pandemic. So working together, and we can help the NHS and clinicians to deliver excellent care to patients and the wider public. So what is the idea is to close the gap between those barriers. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to work with the partners to provide seamless activity and seamless support from this not quite joined up infrastructure for health technology translation. And we also want to partner and develop a strong relationship with our local industry base, also national industry base, but also with our communities, patient, public, the local authorities, local government, and the clinics, the clinician in the trusts. So one of the primary focus of the Pankhurst was to define an end-to-end pathway for health technology development and deployment and commercialization. It was to understand the landscape. So what do we have in what are the was a pipeline of health innovation at the university, to integrate them with the health innovation. We have a partner, health innovation, the Health Innovation Manchester Innovation Pipeline, and to identify the gap for those projects to go forward and to move higher in the technology readiness level. So as I mentioned, the role of Pankhurst in that spirit is to orchestrate appropriate and relevant support when needed, to help researchers to navigate that complicated end-to-end pathway, and to fill the gap in that support. So this is a beginning, this is still a work in progress, a roadmap on how to develop health innovation and health technology. So while the translational pathway for medicines and drugs is well established, we know that there is preclinical studies and then clinical studies and phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trial. The pathway for medical devices at different tier, because there is different tier of medical devices and digital health technology, and for service transformation is actually not well understood and not well known from researchers. So there is things to think about early when you develop a new product. And so this is a work in progress that we work by consulting engineers and material scientists that want to develop technology with their experience of barrier and hurdle that they encountered while trying to develop technology. So in the medical devices, there is the low tier that includes software engineering and how to develop those through to the real world, the deployment to the NHS, and that involves a lot of IPs issues and ethical issues with data and so on. And this is still not clear on how to address those issues. So those are specific for health technology and so health technology in general. So there are a lot of partners working with Pankhurst, and there is a lot of infrastructure available at the university and within the partnership with local partners to support researchers to develop health technology. We work with a lot of them, and as you can see, they are all involved at different parts of the pathway. So we're here to really coordinate, to signpost, and to help researchers to identify what they need when and to navigate that pathway. So all the disciplines that are involved in the Pankhurst, where we provide support our translational research, and this is working very closely with the Translation at Manchester team. So also implementation science, health economics support to identify and predict the health and economics impact of the technology, evaluation, real world evaluation. So that is something that researchers struggle with, and that we have support at the university and with the partner to provide that information, and also working, because it's a co-development and it's sharing values with everyone. So working with the public as well, because when you create a health technology, there will be ultimately a public acceptance and compliance with those technologies. So if you don't have them on board quite soon, you know, you can develop a great technology, but they won't want to take it. And also we want to address health inequalities and to deploy those technologies that can improve the life of people to all parts of the communities, and in particular to the underrepresented part of the community. So we work, so the Pankhurst Institute is truly cross-disciplinary, involving all the parts of the universities, the Faculty of Humanities, Science and Engineering, and Biology, Medicine and Health. So those are the vision and the priority. They were in the in the introduction. So we want to build a community of practice around health technologies and co-develop really co-creation, co-develop a new technology, so working closely with companies, care providers, etc., all the relevant key stakeholders, develop a shared understanding of the health and care needs and opportunities that we could address and benefit from, co-creation, and provide a comprehensive support for the researchers all along the translation pathway. There will be a building. The expected completion is next year, summer 2022. So it's soon. We will have the hub building that will be able to meet and provide support in person to deliver the objective of the Pankhurst. There will be also a dedicated space within City Labs 4.0, and that is ideal as this space will be at the heart of an incubation space and also the NHS, the MFT campus. One of the flagship programs that we started since last year is to support our local industrial environment, and so we've been awarded an ERDF project that is led by Health Innovation Manchester, but the University of Manchester is a significant partner. And this project, this accelerator, is meant to provide bespoke support to SMEs to accelerate the development and improve commercialization of their products. So it's to support that commercialization of new products in the life science market. So we know that companies have issues to commercialize in the life science market. It's information, the barrier to entry to the market, and also the access to the market via the NHS. And this is linked to health economics model that are not well understood, and the real evaluation of those products. So these ARDF target is a bit different to the type of project the university work on, as the TRL level, the technology readiness level, is quite high. So it starts typically 3-4, where the university will take the lead in providing support, and it goes up to the end of the spectrum, and that support will be provided typically by Health Innovation Manchester. So just quickly, this accelerator is divided in two parts. So there is a level 1, which is called the support zone. And so this highlights the University of Manchester project team that is composed of business engagement that will engage with the SMEs at entry, and innovation factory, and also health economics. So we provide support first, point of entry support, and we can deliver a little bit of health economics and commercialization. Then when they achieved and they completed that level of support, which consists of meetings and report and perhaps market analysis, they could request, so there is a menu of support, and they could request additional regulatory and commercialization support or health economics analysis. But where we have an opportunity to co-develop project with industry is via those POM-primed R&D collaborative project. And so this is a competitive selection process whereby company will team up with an academic, co-develop a proposal, and then go through a pitching process where at the end they could co-develop a project with academics and have access through that project to some of the university facilities. So these the SMEs we have and where we want to develop support in is all this critical area of research, and one important thing is that we do support startups as well and spin out company from the University of Manchester. So if you are in that position with a spin out company, please get in touch with us, because we can offer support through the ERDF project, free support for companies for a start. And so that's closed my presentation. Please, if you have any question, don't hesitate to go on the website and then contact the Pankhurst team, and we'll be able to provide more information. Thank you very much.
Cool. Brilliant. Thank you, Ania. Have we got any questions from the audience? Feel free to put into the chat.
Can I start with one, Fiona?
Yep, certainly.
So we give time to the audience to put any question if they have any. Ania, I think these, obviously I'm involved in Pankhurst as well. And I think the idea of creating this hub with all the experience is great. And my question is more operational. What do you think the support to early career researcher mostly, or to experienced researchers but new to translation? Is there a plan to almost creating a mentorship program in which early career researcher or people with no experience in translation can access to the expertise of those people? They've been there, they've done that, and normally it's about finding out what to do. So are you planning to match them in this way, or in any way, with events or something like that? What's the plan for the Pankhurst for that?
Yeah, so we have started already to highlight some of the issues about health technology translation. So we developed a series called Demystifying Regulation and Commercialization, and that was open to anyone. So it was open for SME, to SMEs, obviously enrolled in the ERDF, but it was open to anyone at the university, to all the academics. And this gave an idea of health economics and when to use that, when to think about those things, when you develop a new technology, and also about commercialization, which is unclear for a lot of academics, and value proposition and regulation. So regulatory issues as well were explained in this series. So this series is still available on demand. There are the videos that people can access. But so that was a first informatory or skill development program. We will do both. We will do more, working with translation at Manchester, but also developing some program, perhaps more about health economics. So we have Alex Thompson, who is a senior research fellow that worked very closely with us, and Catherine Payne as well. So all the health economics center is available. We work very closely with the Innovation Factory as well, that can provide additional support in terms of regulatory. So we will do, working with these academic and support, we will do a lot of session, workshop, to inform early career and also more senior academic to try to be involved in the translation of health technology. Also, because we have this accelerator program, we will facilitate as well co-development with industry, which I think we need to have everyone in the room to discuss and to see how we can provide and develop those solutions. One can't work in isolation, and so this is why it's key to work with industry and to work with the clinical sector and the trusts. I don't know if it answers your question, but it's in the plan. We develop a lot of activities. We also gonna develop, because one of the problem of the early career researchers is also to be involved in bigger grants. So, to be able to be a co-investigator in a big program consortium. So we plan, and we already have developed working group on grant challenges. So the first one that we organized was via the Greater Manchester Applied Research Collaboration, the ARC, and so we developed a workshop on health inequalities and digital health inclusion. And so we will create, from those workshops, there were a lot of interests, we will create a working group where we can involve every member of sector, so academics, clinician, members of the public, perhaps local authorities, and so on. So this is the first working group on health inequalities. We have another one in preparation on healthy aging, so digital inclusion and how digital health technologies can provide new solutions to enable people to be independent at home or remote care, for example. So this is the digital health and artificial intelligence, machine learning kind of research area, but we do the same in engineering and material science. We will develop a working group on biowearable, and we work closely with MCRC the Christie on those bio-wearable. So this is a bit of the activities that we are driving at the moment.
That's great. I love support, and we look forward to the building up.
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks, Anya, and thanks, Ali, for the question. There are no more currently in the chat, so we'll move on to our next speaker, but do feel free to pop any questions for Anya into the chat. So moving on to Denise, who is from the imaging facilities and who's going to tell us about how they can support clinical and preclinical imaging across a wide range of diseases. And yeah, please don't forget to put questions in the chat. Thank you. Over to you, Denise.
Lovely, thank you, Fiona. Can everybody see the screen okay? Fab, thank you, always like a thumbs up. Lovely, thank you very much for the invite to come and talk to you all this morning. I work with Alessandro because since January this year, I've become part of faculty research and business engagement. So it's a big move for us in the imaging facilities. So it's great to be able to have this opportunity to start linking up the actual imaging activities in the university and translational research. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of that with you this morning. So before we start, I just thought I'd show you all, this is a bit of a work in progress mission. So it's not the final version, so don't go off and say, oh, this is definitely what imaging is going to do. But we came up with this about 3 years ago, so it's quite a long work in progress, but there are reasons why, and I'll tell you about that shortly. But it's just about the impact we want to have on translational research within imaging. So we can do this from, as Fiona said, from preclinical through to clinical imaging as well. And we work with a range of university members of staff, commercial sponsors, and also academic sponsors. So we cover a wide range of activities. So in terms of, this is our version of the imaging translational pathway. Ania, yours was very much more slick than mine is. But what this just demonstrates is where the equipment is and how that fits into the translational pathway. So I'll talk you through the ins and outs of the kit and where it is and why it fits into those particular headings. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, you will see that the 3T MR scanner at the clinical research facility, so that's there as MCRF, covers both experimental medicine and also clinical scanning. The reason it's in experimental medicine is because the Manchester CRF was funded primarily for experimental medicine purposes. So we've had to put it in there, but it is also used for clinical scanning as well. So this is a matrix that Andy Brass and I came up with when we were part of the Division of Imaging, Informatics and Data Sciences. And what this just shows is that imaging, we're in a very lucky position actually, because imaging covers pretty much every disease area going. And most of the modalities other than PET-MR, which I will come on to, are already out there in the clinic being used for patient benefit anyway, which is fantastic news. So we can see from the vertical columns, they're the typical disease areas that we work with, but we can work with many more than that. And then the vertical lines are the cross-cutting themes. And it's really interesting what Ania was just talking about, because the one at the very bottom, machine learning and big data, is a real push area for us. Because if you just think about how many scans are performed in the NHS on a daily basis, all that data is there sitting for us, for our clinicians, for our academic researchers to look at. That there are ethical considerations, of course, with that in terms of patients only come for a clinical scan, so they need to understand that it could be used for research purposes, and also the logistical side of things, that the scan images can run into. I'm no technical member of staff, but they run into big gigabytes per scan. So we're talking about an awful lot of data there that we would need to think about having an infrastructure that could use that. So this just shows you, this organizational chart shows you by site where we're located. A lot of people, probably not the people on this call, think imaging facilities is another word for WIMIC, which is the Wolfson Molecular Imaging Centre in Withington. But what this slide shows is that we're much more than one building. So in WIMIC, if I start off with that, because that's where the bulk of our activity is, or bulk of our equipment is, I should say. So we've got clinical scanners, and I will go through these in some, not heavy detail, but some detail shortly. So we've got MR scanner on site, clinical. And the reason the PET scanners are in orange is because they've already reached their end of life. So they're still in situ, but we're not using them anymore for clinical work. The preclinical side of things, we've got PET-CT, MR, small animal radiation research platform, and also bioluminescence, that's BLI at the bottom. And then until December 2020, we had a radiochemistry facility that manufactured radio tracers for human injections and also for preclinical. And since July, that's been leased to the Medicines Discovery Catapult. And I know we've got DFAF on the call anyway, who works for MDC. So that's now leased to them to manufacture tracers, but primarily for preclinical work, as I understand it. Apologies in the meantime for the cat tail appearing in my screen. I'm trying to keep her off the desk. So the next location we're at, it's Stockford building, which everybody knows. So we've got a preclinical 70 MR scanner there. The clinical research facility on Grafton Street, we've got an MR scanner. We've got the PET MR scanner at MFT, so that's at St Mary's Hospital. And then the one on the far right is the latest addition to the stable, which is another 3T MR scanner that's actually owned by Salford Royal, and that's located at that hospital site. So I mentioned before, so we've moved into research and business engagement in December 2020, and we were formerly part of DIDS in health sciences. And we have a new director of imaging, Stavros Stivaros, some of you might know, and he joined us in December 2020 as well. So we've gone through an awful lot of change in the last 6 months, and that's parking the pandemic to one side. So that's saying something. So I'll go into the modalities now. So start off with preclinical imaging. So this is the equipment that we have at each site, which I've talked about just before. Just to say as well, at WMIC, we also have an animal handling unit, which is really good. So if we've got animals on site who need to be injected with whatever they need to be injected with, they can stay on site for, I think it's up to a year, something like that, but with regular checks from the BSF and our vets as well to make sure that the animals are all okay. And it's mainly rodents that we image. So Stockford, as I mentioned, the preclinical MR scanner, and then we've got staff that cover both sites. So we've got a senior experimental officer, research fellow, who's called Ben Dickey, and then a couple of preclinical lab technicians as well, who will actually do all the scanning work and the injections of radio tracers for PET CT scanning. So we also have what's known as the PRIME meeting, which is preclinical executive, whereby any applications for using any of these facilities go through. They're discussed locally because we're subject to a lot of regulatory regulations, I suppose, in terms of the Home Office licenses and also radiation with us injecting radio tracers. So certainly at WMIC, high security building because of the radioactivity that's on site. So these are the types of activities that happen with preclinical imaging. I won't go through them all, but it just gives you a flavour of the different types of activities that we scan against. I think drug discovery is really interesting, especially with the translational hat on. And what we see with imaging is that the translational work can take decades. Because if you're thinking about drugs, you're testing them in rodents, then you've got to go into the phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trials before it hits the clinic. So it's an awfully long pathway, which actually impacts quite heavily on our research outputs, because we tend not to have those for some time after the imaging has actually happened. So if we move on to MR imaging, this is the Salford scanner. So that was installed in March this year. As part of an upgrade program that the Trust was pulling together. So they upgrade, I think they put in about 3 or 4 new scanners. This is the only one that the university is involved with. So these are the MR scanners that we've got. So one at WMIC, clinical research facility, and then the Salford ones I've just shown you before. So until July 2020, the university scanner was in situ at Salford. That was then decommissioned because I think at that point it was 16 years old, which is pushing it a little bit with an MR scanner. And then the university contributed to the purchase price of this new scanner. And we've now got 21 hours a week access, which is a phenomenal amount of hours actually that we can work with to get some new studies and clinical trials set up there. Salford is especially important because it's the Centre of Excellence for Neurosciences. And then we'll know about the Geoffrey Jefferson Research Centre as well that we're working with in terms of getting some new studies set up. So other than the Salford scanner, we've got an MR physicist who visits all the other sites and does weekly checks to make sure the scanners are working optimally. He also works on developing new sequences for studies, teaching and also research work. So moving briefly on to MR imaging and what it's all about. What do we do? As I said before, it's multiple disease areas. And the translational impact is obviously quicker with clinical scanning, and with apologies for using a link to the Daily Mail to begin with. There's one link there which talks about oxygen enhanced MRI. So this is where, and I'm not a radiographer, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but where a participant actually is given up to 100% oxygen during a scan. So you can see the impact of oxygen on a tumour. And this particular activity that was led by James O'Connor went far and wide in terms of the press. So you can see sort of the instant impact of that sort of work. And we're also quite well known for our functional MRI, which is where a participant is given tasks to do during a scan, and then you can instantly see the impacts on the brain of what's happening there. So one of the huge benefits for us in terms of translational research is MR is widely used across the NHS, as we know. We offer 1.5T and 3T, so some are better for some disease areas than other ones. We've had some huge challenges, certainly in terms of the COVID restrictions, that being face-to-face research and very much close contact work. So we've seen a huge impact on our scanning numbers there, which is unfortunate. We're starting to pick back up. But what we have, excuse me, continue to do as well is offer clinical scanning for the NHS, so to help with their waiting lists. So as well as generating income, that also means the radiographers keep up to date with their skills. So you mentioned, Alessandro, before about with Ania about new researchers, early career researchers, and that's a particular push for us at the moment as well. We've been very much used to the same researchers again and again using imaging, and we want to really extend that to not just FBMH but other faculties and outside trusts also. So what we're doing, so we've done this a while ago, but it stopped during the pandemic, is have a call for what we call MR imaging grants, whereby researchers can apply for up to 20 hours of free scanning, and that will allow them to generate pilot data that can go into grant applications. It's a little bit chicken and egg scenario. They need to have that data to show the funder that there is a need to do that particular study. So that will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And that will probably focus on the Salford scanner. I think it should do, with that being the brand new scanner that we've got in at the moment. So PET-MR scanner. So this is one of only 8 scanners in the UK that combines PET imaging with MR imaging. That's located at St Mary's Hospital in Manchester University Foundation Trust, and that's part of a much bigger suite that was opened in June 17 by Lem Cisse, Nancy Rothwell, Kathy Cowell from the Trust as well. It was a really, really good opening event. This was funded by the Medical Research Council as part of the Dementias Platform UK initiative, and that covers not just the 8 PET-MR scanner sites, but also other institutes that are interested in dementia scanning. So this opens us up for multi-centre trials, which is really exciting. So the technical stuff, it's a GE Signa PET-MR scanner. We installed it in, it went in September 15, and actually was commissioned in 2016. So what we can do with that is simultaneous PET-MR scanning. So you'll have heard of PET-CT scanning, and then also MR scanning as standalone methods of imaging. This actually combines PET with MR, so there's no CT involved there. And for those, we inject participants with radio tracers. So that's when you can see where the radio tracer ends up. I'm really sorry, my cat is really starting to annoy me now, so I'll just get rid of her. And what we used to do until December 2020 is use novel tracers that we used to produce at the Wolfson Molecular Imaging Centre. I'll come on to that shortly, because that facility is actually closed now. So we can also use the scanner for standalone 3T MR scanning, which is probably used the bulk of at the moment for MR scanning. So we have our own radiographers, we've got PET physicists, MR physicists, and also because we work locally with the Trust, and also we need them, we've got contracts with the Trust for various experts to allow us to run the scanner as a PET-MR scanner. So really heavily regulated, as you'd probably guess. So the main applications for us are dementia oncology. dementia at the moment, oncology is some area that we want to move into. What we found with the 2 initial PET-MR scanners in London, they are used about 60% for prostate imaging. So that's already in the clinic. So that's something that we really want to work on. So we're talking with colleagues about getting some studies set up with that. And then our director of imaging, Stavros, is a pediatric neuroradiologist. So he has a specific interest in pediatric imaging, especially neuroimaging. And the reason why PET-MR is so good for this is because there's a reduced imaging time for participants. So they no longer need a separate PET-CT scan and a separate MR scan. And because they're not having the CT element of a PET-CT scan, they can also get lower doses of radioactive material injected into them, which is a win-win for everybody involved. But there are huge challenges with PET-MR. Combining those 2 modalities in terms of staff health and safety regulations is a huge challenge, and one that's ongoing. Not least, radiographers tend to be trained in either MR or PET. There aren't really any PET-MR radiographers that can cover both modalities. So that's an issue, that's a national issue that the DP UK network is looking at. Access to novel radio tracers. So the standard tracer that's used is something called FDG, which is used in your general cancer imaging in the clinic. But obviously our researchers would like access to the novel radio tracers that we used to manufacture until December, and they could be shipped down to PET-MR by about 11 o'clock every morning. Now we're having to go to commercial manufacturers and other academic imaging centres who do make radio tracers, because there are no local ones in Greater Manchester. Access to those tracers is getting to be really difficult. So some of them don't appear until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you've got to once you've injected that into the participant, you've got to let that uptake for up to an hour and then do the scan. So we're having now to look at working arrangements for our radiographers. So that's really changed our view on how we work. We also have a challenge in terms of bringing clinicians on board into this new modality. It's brand new. A lot of them have never heard of it before and need to be convinced of the efficacy of it. And we're really looking to try and make PET-MR the imaging modality of choice, where patients currently need separate PET and separate MR scans. And for that, we're working with GE, who's the scanner manufacturer, to develop an online seminar, or even maybe an open day, who knows, we can actually meet in real life, to get clinicians on board from trusts across Greater Manchester, further afield, academics, clinicians within the university, just to see what we can do to raise awareness of the imaging modality and what PET-MR can do for researchers. And for more information, you can contact me there if you want to apply to use any of our scanners. So we have a full process for clinical scanning as well as preclinical scanning. And for clinical scanning, we need to make sure you've got all the regulatory documentation in place to run imaging. We've got a website that's just recently been updated, and we have a Twitter feed as well. Thank you very much for your time.
That's great, Denise. Thank you. That was a great overview of the imaging modalities available. If there is any question for Denise, either raise your hand or put that in the chat. In the meantime, perhaps I can ask a quick question to you, Denise, if that's
Sure.
okay. So in terms of mostly preclinical scanning, I would say, so what type of support do you provide to the researcher in terms of, when they're applying to for the funding? Do you have them doing the costing, but do you also have them writing the imaging bit of the application? Because they might not be, that might not be their expertise, especially if they're new to translation.
Yeah, absolutely. So all applications for costings come through me. So we have a track compliance costing and pricing policy in place. So depending on your funder type, your costs will be different. We can also help. This is preclinical as well as clinical, in terms of accessing the radio tracers from outside, because often people just don't know where even to start with that one. In terms of the imaging side of things, that's happily something I'm not going to help with, but we have, as I mentioned during the speech, we've got the physicists that are involved that can help develop sequences, and also a range of really experienced lecturers, academic members of staff who are more than happy to help with new applications. So on the neuro side of things, Laura Parks is immensely helpful, Daniela Montaldi, and we can certainly signpost early career researchers to colleagues like that who will be more than happy to help. PET side of things, we've got colleagues such as Julian Matthews, Marie-Claude Asselin, Rainer Hintz, who again are happy to be involved in applications like that. So we do pretty much cradle to grave. So we're happy to help with the costings and setting up the imaging work. We do some help with clinical activities as well, clinical applications, things like your IRAS form, all those sorts of things, your patient information sheets, your consent forms. We can offer our input into how the imaging works at Manchester to make sure that those forms are right before they go off for regulatory approval.
That's fantastic. And then a little bit, our question will be a little bit more practical, maybe silly, but if an academic decides to do preclinical study using your imaging facility, will they actually be using the equipment, or is it just going to be, so will they be trained, or is it just going to be a technician running the scanners?
It depends. It's mostly run by our staff because they're fully trained in the equipment and how that's all used. For the 70 MR scanner at Stockford, I know Ben does allow some researchers to run that scanner themselves, but that's subject to full training. So I should have mentioned it, but the imaging facilities has a full quality management system with SOPs, working practices, policies, all those sorts of things. So for anybody coming onto site, whether it's PET MR or PET MR, you would need to follow local rules. So we make sure that you coming on site, you're fully safe. So MR imaging, for example, if you've got a pacemaker or metal inside your body, we would need to know about that beforehand. So there's certain safety forms that you would need to complete. So don't worry, we don't give people a key and say, you know, crack on, get on with your imaging. It's all pretty, other than 70 MR, it's all done by our staff.
That's great. Well, hopefully today will be the first step to raise a little bit of awareness of all these possibilities, and we're happy to promote your funding call through our network.
Lovely, thank you, Alessandra. I was going to ask you about that.
Please let us know all the details when they come up. Do you know the deadline when it's likely to be?
I don't know yet. So it's sat with Stavros at the moment. He's got all the documentation, and so he's just going to give me the green lights to go ahead. We normally give colleagues about 6 weeks to get something into us, and to be honest, it's a very standard application form. It doesn't, you have to go into details or huge details about what you're wanting to do. It just gives us an idea of what you'd like to achieve, and then we see if that fits with what we want to achieve. Is it? Yeah. And we're really pushing for early career researchers. I think that's a really good push for us.
Fantastic. Happy to help to promote it.
Thank you.
If there is no other question for Denise, then we can probably draw this event to a close. I have another favor to ask everybody in the room before I thank the speaker and close this. Oh, actually, there is a question from, oh no, it's just a comment from Colette. If you could complete the poll that I'm just going to be launching now. This is just for us to understand if this series is meeting your expectation, and also to see if you'd like it to continue to be an online event, or if you'd rather being a face-to-face. And if whilst you complete that, so it should show up in your screen now. I would like to thank our speakers again, both Ania, who I have left now, and Denise for providing these talks today. And again, I want to remind you about our event in December. So if you visit our website, you can register now. There's a poster competition. There will be face-to-face session at the Whitworth Art Gallery. So we look forward to see you all in person after seeing you on Zoom calls for over a year now. So thank you for answering the question in the poll. I'll see you at the event, or perhaps we'll circulate the details about the next seminar in November as well. So subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't done so already. That's the best way to keep in touch and to keep up to date with our activities. So thank you very much for attending today, and see you next month.